Cocktails with Patrick. One part relationships, one part entertainment, all parts fun. Being served right here, only on Cosmo Radio, Sirius 111 and XM 162.
All right, this is going to be fun. I look forward to this. Dr. Jill Murray, psychotherapist. You can check her out, drjillmurray.com. Jill with 2 L's, and we've got the link right up there, twitter.com/Cox with P. Just to clarify, Dr. Jill Murray is and it's really cool. If you check out her website, you'll really get an idea for what she stands for and how helpful she is. But she does a lot of speaking engagements around the country about relationships at colleges, many seminars, not just for teenagers, although one of her books directed toward teenagers, but for adults in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. And she's one of the leading experts on healthy versus unhealthy relationships in the United States, and we're just honored to be joined by her. You may know that the holidays are a time where, Leah and I have discussed it in a jovial sense, the sense that, that it reminds you that you're single, and certainly I understand that. But it's also a time where sometimes people will hold on and make excuses to have somebody around because it is a sentimental time. And here to talk about that and so much more is the amazing Dr. Jill Murray. The lovely and talented, I should say. Hi, Dr. Jill.
Hey, Patrick. What a great intro. I'm going to try to live up to that in the next few minutes.
Well, listen, I know you've done Oprah, but you should be nervous for this interview right now.
I am shaking in my slippers. I just have to tell you, Patrick, I listen to you guys all the time.
Well, it's because you're a smart lady.
Well, of course I am.
Right.
I'm fun. I'm fearless. I'm the whole kit and caboodle. But, Oprah pales in comparison to you, Patrick.
Well, I like your attitude off the start here, Dr. Jill Murray. Your website is beautiful, and you've got the new book, But He Never Hit Me, The Devastating Cost of Non-Physical Abuse to Girls and Women. Let's get started here, and just a little background on Dr. Jill Murray. The idea or the genesis for I'll even call it a crusade against unhealthy relationships began how and when?
It began about 15 years ago, and I was working as a psychological intern, actually, in a domestic violence shelter. And what I found there, I guess I was counseling about 250 women about a couple years' time, was that every single one of them began their unhealthy relationships when they were young teenagers, like 13, 14 years old.
Right.
And even if they hadn't been in a household where they saw this, they just kind of went from creep to creep, and each creep got creepier. And when we found them, and they appeared on our doorstep at the shelter, they had 2 or 3 or 4 little kids by 2 or 3 or 4 abusers, and it was shocking to me that none of them knew how they got there. So they felt really hopeless that they would ever be in a healthy relationship, and just kind of felt like this abuse thing was in their veins. And so I started doing talking in schools and high schools, really, about unhealthy relationships. And really what I found there was just, absolutely mind-boggling, and it just sort of became a crusade.
Well, let's get started with that. And again, it's drjillmurray.com. We're just honored to be joined by Dr. Jill. It's funny because when we got the idea and Kate sent over your information, just last week we had a young lady call on the show, and it was like, man, that's perfect for Dr. Jill. I think Lee and I both thought this. A young lady was calling about her sister, who, me being a novice from the outside looking in, you could tell, even if there wasn't some physical abuse going on, it was certainly emotional abuse. And I guess we should start there. What do you look to identify what you consider to be, a crummy relationship or an abusive relationship beyond the physical?
Well, I'm glad that you asked about, non-physical abuse, because really physical abuse is, I would say, the vast minority of unhealthy relationships.
Really?
Mostly, yeah. Oh, yeah. Patrick, we think of abuse or unhealthy or crappy relationships, and we think of somebody with a broken arm or a black eye, and really, that's not it. And if you get to that stage in your relationship, you've had like 300 signs of an emotionally or verbally abusive relationship first that you've ignored. So some of that stuff would be, texting your partner, and let me just say up front that women can be highly abusive to men as well.
Yes.
And so it's not just, poor little, female victim and big bad boy. So either way, there's this constant texting, and I'm just talking about texting all night long, where you're not even allowed to sleep. And usually the texts are, where are you? What are you doing? Who are you with? Who did you talk to? I mean, they're very invasive and kind of like an interrogation. And when it happens at, 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, unless you're up partying, and you're sleeping, then really you just don't even have a right to sleep. So that's really, really abusive. Your partner embarrasses you in front of other people. He or she insults you a lot.
Right.
Super jealous, doesn't want you to spend time with your friends. If you're a woman, you're not allowed to have guy pals. That's absolutely, not allowed, because they're constantly sort of assuming that you're having a sexual relationship with your guy pal. They criticize you a lot. They threaten to commit suicide, or to, if you break up with them, they get involved real fast, say I love you, on the first, second, third, fourth date. I mean, it's all that kind of stuff that feels really invasive really fast. But I have to say, Patrick, to women, a lot of times that seems really romantic.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
It's the attention. They're craving no matter what kind of attention they're getting, it's insatiable. They need it.
Right. It seems like the guy is really into you when actually those are signs of, a potential creep. And so it gets really confusing for women really fast.
Well, listen, I am seriously glad, and the phones will blow up, because over the past 5 years, I don't know if we've spent enough time talking about really identifying and getting out of and kind of coming to. And the idea is, around the calls that come in, I'll always hear glimpses. And if you've listened to the show, I'm sure you're freaking out as an educated woman, like, oh my gosh, you probably hear the telltale signs when you're listening to some of the callers. And even as a novice, we can pick up on it as well at times. But Dr. Jill, let me ask you this. And again, her new book, But He Never Hit Me, The Devastating Cost of Non-Physical Abuse to Girls and Women. Just do us a favor. Go check out drjillmurray.com, and all the information's there on her previous books as well. I'll just give you a prime example, and you tell me if it jumps out at you. The young lady that called about her sister that was dating a guy, he was, I guess you could call it vain, and he would try to disguise telling her that she needed to exercise and eat better. He would disguise that as, oh, I care about you, but it came across as it was, the sister looked at it as a red flag, because he was constantly berating her sister, who's his girlfriend, that she needed to get in better shape and what's wrong with her and she needs to eat better. I'm guessing that's a sign of something that's not good.
Yeah, it's that constant criticism of the way she looks and that she's not good enough. And there's kind of this subtle message that appears in these things that if you don't shape up, I'm going to leave you. Like, there's, 20 other women that are hot for me, and you better watch out. And it gets into, like, the woman's brain that I'm not good enough, and I'm not cute enough, and I'm not sexy enough. And, usually, I don't know if this caller said that, but usually what happens is sort of adjacent to these comments are, wow, look at that woman. She's really hot. Wow, did you see the ass on that woman? I mean, it's all of that kind of stuff where not only are you not good enough, but then I'm going to throw it in your face that all these other women are better than you. It's just devastating. I mean, when we talk about why women stay in these relationships, you can start off with some reasonable self-worth, but then you start getting this message little by little by little, and it just devastates you, and you feel like I couldn't leave him if I wanted to because nobody else would have me.
Dr. Jill, can we identify where the behavior on both ends starts? Is it as simple as the upbringing? Does it become a repetitive pattern that one jumps from relationship to relationship with? I'm sure you've done plenty of research on this. Can we identify where it all begins?
Yeah, we can. I mean, we can more easily for the abuser, whether it's a guy or a girl, and usually that they grew up in an environment like this. And it may not, Patrick, be like really noticeable where, dad's hauling off and throwing mom against, a wall. It may not be that, but it may be stuff like the guy was, if the guy's the perp, that the guy was given the message that, you're no good and you're stupid and you're lazy. I wish I never had you. Can't wait till you leave. You're an idiot. Stuff like that. Or like in a woman's home, let's say if the woman's the one being abused, it may not be really outward signs, but it might be, dad's kind of master of the castle, and even if mom's the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, when she comes home, she defers to dad, and there's, stupid women jokes, and there's, tits and ass jokes, and there's, dumb blonde jokes, and maybe dad is a screamer, or maybe he's not, and maybe dad just leaves, maybe dad checks out, like, I'm out of here, and slams the door behind him. And, that kind of fear of abandonment of a guy, leaving, a girl will hang on to an abuser. She'll hang on to anybody with her toenails if she has to.
888-81-COSMO, 888-812-6766. I certainly want to get into, once the problem is identified, maybe tips that you can give to help. I mean, the phones are blowing up because I think so many people can relate, whether they're going through it or a loved one's going through it, Dr. Jill. I want to break now, so I have plenty of time to talk to you. Can you hold for like 3 minutes?
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Okay, great. Dr. Jill Murray joins us here on Cocktails with Patrick. We're honored to have her. If you have questions, get them in, 888-81-COSMO, and also cocktailswithpatrick at SiriusXM.com. This is something that's serious. It's identifying unhealthy relationships. And you can check out all the resources that Dr. Jill has on her website, drjillmurray.com. I assure you that you want to forward the link, and let's take this serious, okay? Because it's nothing to be joked about. More with Dr. Jill Murray. It's Cocktails.
Your guy did what? Patrick can tell you why your dudes do what they do. It's Cocktails with Patrick on Cosmo Radio, Sirius 111 and XM 162. Why didn't he call? How do I decode his text message? What did he mean by that? What's he thinking? No need to fret. Patrick's here on Cocktails with Patrick, Cosmo Radio, Sirius 111 and XM 162.
All right, we're gonna keep her as long as she will let us keep her. She's Dr. Jill Murray. She's a psychotherapist, and she is essentially one of the leading, and I would say the leading, because she's on our show and she's a big deal, experts on healthy versus unhealthy relationships. She's got her new book out, But He Never Hit Me: The Devastating Costs of Non-Physical Abuse to Girls and Women, and you can check out all her books and more information. And you can even email her at drjillmurray.com. We've got calls lined up for her, and it's important. It's a really important message to get out there. Let's bring Dr. Jill back. I think Dr. Jill's calling from a kennel because she's got about 12 dogs back there. What's going on? What kind of dogs do you have, Dr. Jill?
I have two Shelties, and they sound like a kennel, for God's sake. It's so unruly.
I thought somebody was breaking in.
I know, right?
You are a professional. She kept doing the interview, Leah. That's pretty good. Now, we were talking about identifying, and, it can get pretty clinical, but I think it's important for those girls that are listening, guys even that are listening, not that just are in the situation, but that can identify some maybe loved ones or friends going through it. What always is touchy, Dr. Jill, is how you approach somebody going through this without them resenting you, or without them, without feeling the wrath of you actually delivering the news. Do you suggest a way for friends and family to approach those they would consider to be in an unhealthy relationship?
Yeah, I do, and that's a really good point, Patrick, because you know what? It's really frustrating being friends or a family member, and very worrisome as well, with somebody who's in an unhealthy relationship. And the frustrating part, I mean, the worrisome part is obvious, but the frustrating part is that, you break up, you get back together, you break up, you get back together. So when you're a friend or a family member, you think, oh, right on, they